Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B, and it's finally here, the NFL Draft. I always get confused because it feels like I never know what week it's going to be, and all of the pre-show stuff, you hear about people giving their predictions, and hey, so-and-so is going to be moving up the draft, and I've been hearing a lot of people trading down this year, because when you have 5 quarterbacks that could be taken in the top 10, once that happens, if you're one of the teams that needs a quarterback and you're sitting there like at 10 or 9, you're like, I can trade down, probably try to get some other picks or whatever I can do. And I'm hearing that kind of with the Steelers. It's like maybe we can make some moves, not really worry about the quarterback position and kind of see if Fields can swing it this year or just give Russ a year and do whatever. But I'm just kind of worried that we're not going to have that happen. And I really don't think 5 quarterbacks are going to be drafted that high. What do you think?
Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me.
But I don't think they're standouts.
But over the last couple of years, there haven't been many standouts, and it's easy to say that now, being hindsight. But when you look at the draft, there's nothing in a pass-happy league like the NFL that's going to generate fan excitement than to draft a quarterback. And you get the jersey sales, you get the preseason hype. In a lot of these cases, you get the benefit of not having to play him right away. You can draft a quarterback right off the bat and say, "Hey, we want to ease him into the program. We don't want to force our hand. We want to just take our time, get them accustomed to the league, and then as your team doesn't address." Offensive and defensive line, secondary, edge rusher, and you're still the same stink pot team, then you'd be like, well, yeah, we're going to let our new quarterback, like, you generate that interest. You restart the cycle again. That's why the bottom half of the league has stayed the bottom half for years.
I was just telling a buddy of mine that they keep talking about Aaron Judge, and I'm like, I really don't care about any Yankees, so it makes me laugh that he's hitting like 100 something. But I was like, you better be careful, because you never know what happened trade deadline. Pirates could bring in Aaron Judge. Think all the jerseys they could sell. Him and McCutchen? Good grief, bro. It doesn't matter if the team is falling apart or whatever. Jersey sales. You're probably right. That's kind of what it's about. I was trying to look at just because I don't even think the top 5 quarterbacks every year, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of it deals more with fit. And that's why I was kind of surprised that there's been a lot of heat coming up that the Bears, with the number 1 pick, might be interested more in JJ McCarthy than Caleb Williams, so much so that I saw one executive was like, we're hearing that it's either Caleb or JJ, and they're not really sold. They had Caleb fly in, and he didn't meet with the team brass, which typically happens like before the draft. He went and met with the players, like the team leaders, because they're not sold on his personality, locker room. I don't know. I'm assuming that's kind of what they're looking for. But I said the same thing. At some point, you have to pick guys that are winners. Right? You can be the biggest hype guy in the world. For every CJ Stroud, I mean, in all intents and purposes, he was a winner. It just couldn't get over the Michigan hump. Almost beat Georgia in the playoffs. Like, that Georgia team was stacked. And am I surprised that he's been playing well? Compared to the other Ohio State quarterbacks, if you look at it, not really. He kind of performed on the biggest stage, and they just came up short. Where some guys, like Caleb Williams, I can't look at his film and be like, that's the moment that I realized like he's a winner. You know, like he never really made that big type throw for me to win the game, especially like when they played Utah or whatever and they're getting pounded. At some point, like I'm waiting for him to, you know, step it up. Because last year I really wanted them to win. I didn't want Ohio State to back into the playoffs. Are you kidding me? And I'm watching it and I'm like, this guy's falling apart. No way. They gave him the Heisman anyway. And I'm just like, no way is this guy going to be the number one pick. All I have to do is watch that game and just, and that's the one thing with JJ for talking about, like my talks about him being like inaccurate and things. He never really fell apart. He never had a game where he fell apart. And maybe the Bears, that's the way to go. And honestly, I find it hard to believe that they can't trade down. Wouldn't the move be for the Bears to trade down? I don't think anyone's going to trade up to grab JJ. Right? You let a team trade up to grab Caleb. And then you grab JJ with like the 8th pick or something.
But
Right?
I think if you're going into the winter, you're saying to yourself as an executive team, we need a quarterback. I don't think regardless of where everyone else thinks they're rated, you do your own homework. And if it's JJ's the guy for you, if Caleb Williams is a guy for you, if Jordan Travis is a guy for you, and you feel like that's going to be the guy for you, pull the trigger. Make it happen. Because you don't want to be kicking yourself in hindsight saying, oh, yeah, he'll be here at pick 9 or 16, and then somebody else jumps up and grabs him, and now you're stuck scrambling.
I did have a note, I think I sent it to you. Some of the brain trust, bro, over like with the Ohio State fans and Michigan State fans, they just don't see it. They're wondering, how is JJ projected to be a top 5 overall pick? Don't GMs and scouts worry how he'll perform when he doesn't know what the defense is running? Are they drafting Connor Stallions too? Like, how would he know that? And it just made me laugh thinking he didn't know. Like the scandal doesn't, like, what do they think? Not only does JJ know Michigan's playbook, he also knows every other team's playbook, Matt. So that when the team yells out the signal, they're just getting it. Maybe that's why they want him number 1. The Bears are like, this guy memorized every playbook in the Big Ten. And Bama and Georgia, like he was ready to go. They had film on Oregon and Florida State. Like Clemson, you don't know who they're going to play. He had to learn every playbook. And so that might put him a step ahead of Caleb Williams. He didn't have that prep. And it made me laugh because like Blake Corum won like the Big Ten's, like one of their, like the Walter Payton Man of the Year, whatever, where they do like the community service. And it just made me think like that's from all that refurbished vacuum work he was doing with Connor Stallions on their porch. Just refurbishing vacuums. It would have been funny if the Big Ten like gave him like his award with a picture of him holding a vacuum or something. I'll just laugh so hard. But that's my insight. I don't know if JJ is going to be the guy. I've rewatched film on a lot of these quarterbacks. Drake May is another one where it's almost not Ohio State. UNC's guys were so overmatched in a lot of ACC play. I wasn't impressed. Like throwing it up to a receiver that looks like they're twice the size as the DB, he's just high pointing it. Okay, great. So you have a strong arm. So does Joe Milton. I wouldn't be picking him number 1. Nothing against him, but like, I don't know how you would pick Drake May over him though. Like UNC winning, they were in the same place as USC. UNC was picked to kind of compete in the ACC. They haven't done it with any quarterback. They always choke to someone. Can't even beat NC State. And it's like, I'm going to be hyped about my team drafting that quarterback? If I'm an NFL guy, my team wastes a 3rd round pick on a UNC or like an Ohio State quarterback up until Stroud, I'd have been like, are you kidding me, guys? Do you want us to bust? Why are we busting all these picks? It doesn't make any sense. But maybe your point's right. If you think JJ's a winner like Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow's, to me, is the closest comparison. Although, did Burrow win the Heisman? I don't know. JJ didn't throw that much. Michigan ran the ball like 60 times or whatever a game. Not really, I think 60 times, but like over 60%. And they didn't need to throw. They had to lead. I rewatched that Bama game I told you. Michigan had the lead almost the entire season, like nonstop. They were behind in the fourth quarter, or like even the second half, or maybe even the second quarter for the first time against Alabama all year. They weren't behind anybody. So of course JJ's not out there slinging the ball around. Would you want your quarterback getting hurt? No. USC, on the other hand, they had no defense. So of course Caleb Williams puts up a ton of numbers. And I don't know. If I was picking, I think I would just trade down. I would trade down and say, all right, we're just going to see who's available after that. Because there are some other ones, like Sam Hartman didn't look too bad. Went to Notre Dame, kind of fizzled out. Was better probably where Wake Forest, where he was before. And it's like, okay. Is he that far behind the other guys? Like, is he that far behind a Drake May? No. I could grab him in the second round and probably have the same type of rookie season, I feel. But I don't know. If you had the top pick, who would you pick?
Ideally, if I was the Bears, I agree with you. I would try to trade back, find the right. I don't think that there's one necessary pick that's going to help them. I do like, depending on how the pieces fall with that other one, that there's discussion of possibly getting Marvin Harrison. That if you go quarterback with the number one and you get the receiver later on, like, I think that at least lends you early on to having the support to attack defenses.
And so, I mean, like, even the Broncos, like, they traded for Zach Wilson. Like, they don't care. They're another one that, like, hey, if a pick comes, like, remember the days of, like, Alex Smith got picked and then no quarterback got picked until Aaron Rodgers, like, in the 20s, right? Isn't that how it happened? I don't think any other quarterback was picked that year. Now it's like, we're going to pick every quarterback in the first couple picks just to show you what's happening. But they still have him. They still have Caleb Williams as, like, the top. Jaden Daniels, another one. I mean, he was involved with that Arizona State. All those Arizona State issues. Did you see those come through?
I saw a little bit, but I really didn't get too hung up on it.
So, well, people are comparing it to the Michigan one because both investigations, I think, kind of wrapped up around the same time, right? So they were kind of over the same thing, except Michigan's was just focused on the cheeseburger visit, and they had an analyst or something that was actually coaching. The same thing, I think when it happened, Michigan didn't. I think Harbaugh brought it up at a Big Ten's meeting and said, like, there's videos of Ohio State doing the same thing. Like, what's the difference or whatever? Like, it was supposed to be just like a practice or whatever, and they never looked into the Ohio State one. So I'm kind of with Harbaugh on that. Like, what the hell? You can't just pick a team to give a penalty to. And so there's no ineligible players, but I guess the Arizona State one, they had players that were ineligible. Now, I don't know if it was NIL related. It was very vague. I'm not reading a 50 to 100 page report, is what people were saying. Oh, it's all in that report if you read that PDF. No, I'm not reading that. The idea, the job of ESPN or whatever site I'm on, they're supposed to recap it for me, not just say players got benefits and then they were ruled ineligible. Like, I need to know what benefits were they getting. Were they getting paid? Was it a cheeseburger scenario? Because that's BS, right? Like, what was the one? Dude got cream cheese on his bagel. and now that's allowed. But did you see the new update that they rolled? They just passed this a couple weeks ago, I think. You can get a cake, but not in your hotel room, Matt. So if you go on a visit, you can't have like a gift basket in your hotel room. You have to get it in the lobby when you check into the room. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did know.
Like that's the kind of thing that they're messing around with. But like I don't know. Like I don't know. Am I supposed to be worried about Arizona State? They said that Pierce did the same thing. He coaches the Raiders now. That Harbaugh did. He's like, you know what? This is all bullshit. I'm out. Going back to the NFL. Don't have to worry about it. And so for him, he just got a long show cause thing. They never really wrapped up Harbaugh's, but they said he was still pissed about the cheeseburger thing. And so like, you gonna get a show cause? I don't see how Harbaugh is the only one that didn't settle yet. So what active investigation is Michigan going to have an ineligible player from? They're not going to give it to Harbaugh for not giving the cheeseburger receipt sooner, right? Like I don't think either of those scenarios kind of match. I just don't know the entire additional details of the Arizona State one that would make their players ineligible. It seemed more of like a pay to get a recruit on campus type deal. And maybe that's what Herm Edwards was doing. I don't know. Now it seems like it doesn't matter. Texas is paying millions for people to come on campus. Why would Arizona State get penalized after the fact? I think it was kind of retroactive, right? Though they just didn't have a bowl last year. They went 3-9. So like, Michigan's wasn't Bulls type stuff. That's why they tried to suspend Harbaugh last year. The same time Arizona State took their postseason ban or whatever early. But we'll see what happens. Jaden Daniels was involved in that, then transferred to LSU and went out and had a better year. Which the same thing with with my guy from Washington, Penix. It's like you went and you stayed around till you're old, then had a great season when you're old. Would I have drafted you at the top pick last year? No, I wouldn't have. I mean, they've been hyping up Drake May and Caleb Williams and even JJ for a couple years now. And I don't feel like just adding in a random up-and-comer with one great season, that kind of scares me. Because I feel like those ones never work out. Like even Patrick Mahomes, he was kind of like the Caleb Williams beforehand, but he was only at Texas Tech. Like he didn't transfer, I don't think. So the knock on him was like, this guy's been putting up numbers, but their team's like 6-7 or whatever. Like they're not good. So you kind of don't know. It's like Aaron Rodgers at Cal. Everyone's like, he looks great. It's like, but he plays at Cal, bro. That's why the Niners got Alex Smith. They're like, he wasn't winning at Cal. You would think that if he's that great, they would be, like actually competing at a high level. Meanwhile, Alex Smith took Utah undefeated. Right? There's a difference. Like, that's why I'm thinking, like, you kind of need a winner. It's not like Alex Smith had a bad career either. You could say the Niners were in a worse situation till Harbaugh got there.
I think it's a little bit deeper, though, than did they win? Because, I mean, I felt like with that same logic, we looked years ago at Jake Locker when he was winning at Washington. There was, like, no supporting cast. It was just him running around winning games by himself. And he really didn't materialize in the NFL.
Yeah, so you never know. You don't know. A guy could be a winner. He could be throwing like he was putting up stats and stuff though. He's looked better. Same with like even Tebow. I know we'll talk about the spring game later, but like the guy Michigan has quarterback reminded me kind of Tebow, where he's like he's moving around making plays. His throws aren't really as accurate, but then I was thinking, do you need that in college? It might not matter. Tim Tebow's like doing pop passes and stuff, and he still won a playoff game. Some of these other quarterbacks, they don't win a playoff game, Matt. At some point, like the winning, that's why I think it has to have levels to it. Like Jake Locker, he won at probably a level of like Jaden Daniels, right? So like he wasn't winning a national championship. He didn't go to the Joe Burrow, JJ level. No matter about the stats, you could say like, well, LSU had a way more weapons. They had a much more passing game. Okay. If JJ played in a passing system, could he have had the same stats? Most likely. But if anyone else, like if Caleb Williams quarterback Michigan, could he have led the comeback against Alabama? I didn't see him lead a comeback against a Utah team that's not as good as Alabama. I don't know. That's where I'm at with some of these guys. It's like when you play the top competition, that's what you're going to be playing in the NFL every week. So you have to have some level of success. Where Penix beat Oregon twice, went out against Texas and had them come back. Yeah, I know he's older. That's kind of why I'm still higher on him. If he fell into the Steelers' lap, I would kind of be pumped about that. I'm not going to lie. Maybe he can get them back to like the running game type stuff, you know? Like, all right, get him in here, open things up a bit. Just spread the ball around. I don't know.
But I'll be honest. If the Steelers do anything other than offensive line for 2 of their 3 picks, I'm going to be pissed.
You don't know what they're going to do, dude. I don't think they're sold on quarterbacks.
Maybe they're not. But I feel like they invested enough that there's not and again, there's not a player that I would risk sticking my neck out for in the first couple rounds. Now, if JJ drastically fell, like say he fell out of the top 2 rounds or top 3 rounds, yeah, round 4, whatever quarterbacks are there, I'm willing to take a flyer on them.
That's where I think your boy Jordan Travis will get picked, right?
And that's, I would say, probably between 4 and 6 is where he'll get drafted.
Well, he fits my mold. Winner. Seemed like a great locker room guy. The only negative is his injury, but Penix had injuries too.
I mean, he has the injury, so there is that, and he's a little bit undersized. Like when you look at Jaden Daniels, he is a smaller sized quarterback, but had more mobility. Jordan Travis, like, I don't know if it was by scheme design, but it used to be so frustrating that the times that he would pull the ball and run, he was very, very good at picking up yardage, but it just felt like they never, whether it was designed that he was supposed to hand it off, it was like, pull the ball and run. Like, you have so many more opportunities for big plays because they're keying on those run plays. And that's where I think I split more hairs with the quarterbacks, because it's like, what are you trying to do in the NFL that fits? Like Mahomes, I think fit that. Andy Reid took the air raid that he was running at Tech and kind of made it more wide open for him in Kansas City that allowed it to work. You know, on the same side, I felt like when Trubisky got drafted by the Bears, Nagy seemed to be running off of that Kansas City tree, the quick inside zone run with the RPOs that Trubisky was doing at North Carolina. I thought he had potential of that being a good fit.
Wasn't he the guy that I was negative on too? That's the key.
Yeah, he was one.
You got to be negative on everybody, and then you're bound to hit, bro. But see, I watched him a lot down here, and that's where I wasn't sold on him. Same with Drake May. Just being down in North Carolina, just casually watching like a lot of ACC games that are on outside of Big Ten windows. It's like, I'm like waiting for him to wow me, and I don't see it. And yeah, you can do all the measurements and like the height and stuff, but your boy Kyler Murray, he doesn't hit that height requirement. You're always talking him up. He still puts up stats, right? What's the difference? Now, with his injury stuff, yeah, maybe being smaller kind of hits you. But I feel like Flutie played for a while, right?
He did. But the thing that balances Kyler Murray out is the fact that he uses his legs. And I'm not... Part of the reason that I find value in him is that I think he uses his legs enough that you can't just bring ridiculous pressure. because he's releases quick enough that he can burn you with it.
I thought you were going to say because you're also like the same height as him, so being a shorter guy, you were like, I could play in the NFL.
I mean, both of us are very fast as well. So I mean, like, I can appreciate someone who can run.
You
really
could definitely
fast
see
like
over the line, just like him, right? That's why I think a lot of people they're like, well, wasn't that thing where I was talking about like the height with like last week or whatever? Everyone's getting like a couple inches. That's where like I need to just start sizing up people when I see him now. Now I'm not sure because like if Kyler Murray's listed at like a certain height, but he's not in real life. What does he do at training camp? He wear lifts? Because he's gonna be taking pictures with people, right? You never know.
Maybe you need to start doing that at work. Oh, you look really tall. You may be uncomfortable sitting at your desk all day. You're probably gonna give you a 5th round grade.
Yeah, well, way too tall, man. You're gonna if you're gonna round his shoulders typing on the keyboard, you need a bigger keyboard. Yeah, I'm an XL. I'm a big man.
I see those oversized hands. You're definitely pre-diabetic. You're not going to be last here. Medical red flag.
Yeah, you can do that in the NFL. You can't do that in other jobs, dude. Like, how fast are you again? Like, if something happened at work, like, could you run out of the building? It's like, I need my inhaler. It's like, you're not going to fit in.
No, I'm sorry. You're not going to fit. You're not what our culture is about.
You're probably being undrafted. We might give you a chance and come to training camp, see what happens. Because, like, for a warehouse guy, they make accommodations. Like, what if you needed accommodations? You just needed taller shoes. See over the line. You don't know. They might help you out. I noticed that, like, looking at some of the draft projections, people are like, oh, you just need to get Marvin Harrison Jr. He's the number 1 pick. And it's like no one is saying to draft him. If the Bears picked him number 1, I'd just laugh. Because it's like what their people don't expect them to do. And yeah, wide receivers seem like they have value, but like out of any other Ohio State wide receivers that have been productive in the league, is Marvin Harrison Jr. that much better? I watch a lot of Big Ten. I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of just his name, right? I'll probably get dogged for saying this. But like I was high on Chris Olave, and he's kind of worked out. And I feel like people are hyping up Marvin Harrison Jr. because his dad. And not a lot of other players that have dads like that get hyped up. I know he's like had great catches and things, but I don't know. Maybe it was him getting kind of locked up by Will Johnson last year, where he got undercut on that slant route that really kind of soured me on him. It's like, fight for the slant route, bro. You let a guy intercept you on like your own 10-yard line. That changed the game. That's why Michigan wasn't like behind Ohio State that game. That if that play gets broken up, maybe Michigan gets a field goal there, they don't score. Right? Maybe Ohio State gets the first down. Like, I feel like some of them, it's on the receiver. And if you're going to be the number 1 pick, I don't want you dogging the slant route on the 10-yard line. I just don't want to see that. I don't understand it. I don't see other guys getting undercut on slant routes, right? Maybe I'm insane, but I'm like, if that's going to be my number 1 pick, I need to be sure that I'm not just buying the hype. Right?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, that's what I'm looking at, the best available, and there are a lot of receivers up there. I don't even know some of the other guys. It's like, why would we have 3 receivers taken in the top 10? And you said about JJ falling, they have him as like the 9th best overall now. Like, they've been moving him up so high that it's beyond Harbaugh just hype. They were saying that one of the things Harbaugh brought up is that JJ played hockey, so he has a toughness that you don't see in other quarterbacks, and that like moved him up in Harbaugh's book a few. And he even had a quote from like one of JJ's coaches where he like won the toughness award in hockey. It's like, you can't make that up, dude. That's like a thing where like, is your quarterback going to be able to take a couple hits in the NFL? Well, this guy got the toughness award in hockey. It's like, all right. Do you have that paperwork? It's like the donkey brains thing, and It's Always Sunny. do you have that certificate, sir? It's like, no, who has a toughness certificate? Well, JJ does. It's like, no one else has that. Get out of here, Harbaugh. Go back to your RV down at the beach, drinking your bottles of wine or whatever you're doing. Someone was saying,
a can of wine.
Well, people were like, if Harbaugh's so sold on him, he should just trade Herbert for him straight up. And I was like, what if he did and it worked out? Like, he won in college with them. It wouldn't be the craziest thing, right? It's not like Herbert's been winning, right? It's not like the Chargers brought Harbaugh in because they were like, we keep losing in the AFC Championship, my guy. It's like, no, we have no success at all. We have absolutely none. We have a guy that people are hyping up as the next great quarterback, but it hasn't worked out. Last time we had a guy like this with Phillip Rivers, it also didn't work out. We could have had Drew Brees. We made that mistake. Like, what if they have the same mistake? People are like, trade Herbert for JJ. I'm like, what if he did that and it worked out? He could also do that and it could be a complete bust. You never know. You never know. But I'm concerned when I look at this projection where like everybody is a quarterback, wide receiver, and then some cornerbacks mixed in. It's like, where are the defensive like linemen and the offensive linemen? The guys that, make the biggest impact. Someone was saying that based on stats, it might have been, was it the S&P thing that they always do? Where they're saying that if you can get pressure on the quarterback, that's the best way to create turnovers. Like the more pressures and sacks you get, the higher turnover rate it is. And it's like, well, why aren't you drafting more high value defensive guys? Because that's always been my thing. Like, get a better pass rusher with one of the top picks. Get a better like offensive line, like you're saying. Go that route. You can always get the other guys. They can always fill in. We're always hearing about so-and-so wide receiver picked in the 3rd round. Or another linebacker taken in the 4th round. It's like, okay, there are guys out there. Some positions, like, they just don't have. The guys are like freaks like Jadeveon Clowney, who didn't really work out, but somehow he's still floating around the league like a decade later, right? Because he's a beast. And you can only draft guys like that if they have all the measurables. The guys that have the measurables and might not work out, but can still be valuable guys, are usually on the line, right? Those are the guys that stick around whether people like it or not, because you just can't recreate that burst and the size. Any other position is kind of a crapshoot. If the guy, even if he's a freak, if he never gets his instincts up as like a linebacker where he can't cover or fill holes or something, he's done. You can't just fill him in. If a defensive line has like the burst or whatever, he just doesn't get the technique down, guess what? It doesn't matter if he's still able to eat up a couple of plays a game or even just come in on 3rd down and rush the quarterback. That's all you need. Like, he's still an impact guy, so you don't really wasting that top pick. And that's where that's my key for this week. Too many quarterbacks. I think there are going to be too many wasted picks this year because not all the quarterbacks are going to work out. I'd say, one of the 5? One of the 5 is going to be maybe a winner. And another one would probably be like at a Matt Stafford type Lions level where he wins, but it's not enough to do anything, or like a Justin Herbert at this point. And I think the other 3 will probably be busts.
That's probably fair.
I mean, if I'm being honest, and some of it might not be talent wise. I think you'll see some of them. It'll be like a Zach Wilson where it's just, you don't fit. They'll get traded to another team. They might be a serviceable guy. At the high ceiling, you'll get a guy that could possibly win at his second team, maybe gets thrown around, or like you just get lucky with like your Nick Foles and you're the backup. And then it turns out you can actually be pretty good. And he's never had the chance because like whatever circumstances, you win the Super Bowl and then that's it. People are like, man, I remember when they got drafted in the 4th overall pick. Like Carson Wentz, like, it's like, yeah, I remember when he was drafted pretty high, and then he kind of faded out. But he got like 3 chances before they finally gave up on him. That's what I think some of these guys are going to get. Anyone outside of those top couple quarterbacks that you think is going to be a good pro that people aren't talking about, or like even if they are talking about them?
I mean, I'll be a homer. I really liked I like Keon Coleman. I thought he played outstanding at Florida State. I think he's going to have a good pro career because he has size.
I don't know why you're a homer on that. Michigan State's already claimed him, bro. They have the jerseys printed up.
He's already given us those Big Ten vibes.
They have the graphic already ready. Sparty's in the NFL. They have his picture right up on front. Yeah, I think he'll be pretty good too. And I'm surprised that he's not higher. Because when he was at Michigan State, he was like one of the top transfer guys the Florida State got, right? So like him being an impact guy, and is it because of Johnny that they just kind of were like, maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it's because they were like not able to target in on him. I don't know.
Well, and I think that it helped for the longest time. Norvell's really been trying to go after these big-bodied receivers, and definitely with Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, and these guys are having success, and it's just going to lead to more recruits coming that way. Because I mean, that's you're joking earlier about short quarterbacks, but I mean, it's definitely a game changer when you have a 6'4", 6'5" receiver matched up on a 5'6", 5'7" corner.
That's why I'm wondering who will get Brock Bowers, because like he fits Harbaugh perfectly, and so like everyone's like Chargers are going to trade up and do something. I'm like, they're going to just end up with Brock Bowers. This is what's going to happen. The universe is saying this is going to happen. And then he's going to be used in all kind of weird ways where he's like running the ball out of the backfield. He's like doing spread out wide. People just can't match up with him because of size and things. And I know he got injured too, so that's why I think that's where like the Chargers are just going to be there. I don't know when they pick or when he's slated, but if all those quarterbacks get picked, I think he'll be a guy that I'm like, I want to see how he gets used. He could also be an absolute bust. We see tight ends come in all the time that have like size and like, was it Kellen Winslow Jr.? Like have all kind of measurables, and they come into the NFL and they really then don't fit into the scheme and they just get bust, right? Who's the other one? Like Pitts came in, another guy like great size and stuff like that. He's kind of worked out for Atlanta, but like he doesn't really fit in with what they do. So then, did they get rid of him? I can't remember. But it's like,
no, they got rid of everyone else but him.
Yeah, so like you have to kind of have an offense. That's where like if I'm Brock Bowers, I'm just praying every single day that Harbaugh drafts me. I'm like, I don't even care. If I go to Harbaugh, I will be utilized 100%. He loves tight ends, and it's just like, all right. I'm curious to see what kind of Big Ten guys get picked, because like I see like a Duke has they're one of their linemen on here and stuff, so it always makes me laugh when a team comes out of left field like that and just has guys getting drafted. I saw a preview and it was like UCLA is coming to the Big Ten. They have one of the greatest offenses in college football. I'm like, bro, Chip Kelly just gave up, went to Ohio State. One of the greatest offenses? What are you talking about? They're bringing nothing to the Big Ten. We don't even know what to expect from them. But yeah, they have a guy on here that could be drafted pretty high. So that's the kind of stuff I like to see. Plus Toledo has a guy up here. I like some of the smaller schools getting the recognition. I also think I sent you we talked a little bit about women's basketball going pro with like Caitlin Clark not getting paid. She gets an offer for like millions of dollars from Nike, and everyone's talking about like, oh yeah, this is how they actually make their money. Ignore that they don't get paid that much, everyone else. And even if you get picked in the second round, you only make $5,000 less than what Caitlin Clark's making in the WNBA. So it doesn't, like, why be the number one pick? It doesn't really matter. You could be a standout, be like an Instagram model or something on the side, and get more endorsements anyway, even if you're not the top pick. But it made me think, because I keep hearing about people tell me, oh, you think women's basketball players should be paid more? It's like, no. And if they're worth it, they could get it. But even on college level, the top three sports are football, of course, which is like average like 30-something million revenue per team. Basketball's next, most of that coming from like the NCAA tournament money and stuff like that. They're like around 8 million or something. I don't have the numbers exactly. And then hockey is number 3 before women's basketball. So we talk about hockey on here. We're probably one of the only podcasts that talk college hockey seasonally, right? We don't talk about it year round, but I bring it up because like Michigan's in there. And someone was telling me, because I'm getting a lot of people telling me that the ACC isn't going under. And they're saying that if you look at the Big Ten and the SEC, they're not even winning national championships in other sports outside of football. Like they don't win in hockey, of course, because it's mostly like the other hockey schools. They don't win in basketball. I don't think they've barely won any championships in women's basketball. They've barely won like any other big time championships, and except for like wrestling is all Big Ten. And I'm like, it doesn't matter though. They win football. That's the most important. You can combine all those other ones up, bottle them up. No one cares. No one even cares about men's basketball. I had someone ask me like, who actually won the tournament? It's like, you were in it for NC State, bro. You didn't even know who won the tournament like 2 games later? Like, you just zoned out. You're like, wasn't on the regular news. They didn't show the highlight. They were showing NC State highlights for a while there, and then they just stopped. I don't know what happened. I don't get it. But that's the same thing like with these NFL guys. They're coming up. At some point, we're going to reach a tipping point where a college guy is going to look at his salary from his NIL deal and say, I'm just going to stay in college. Like WNBA, I feel like one donor could pay to have a super team in college. And remember I brought up, I wonder what's going to happen with Iowa. They already got one of the top transfers this year coming in to fill Caitlin Clark's spot. And that's why I said all it takes is like an interest from a couple of like Iowa alums saying like, man, we got really close to a national championship. Too bad we couldn't convince Caitlin Clark to come back. But we have all this donor money that was on the table. What if we just bought a transfer team / got like all the top recruits to come to Iowa? They've already seen what Caitlin Clark could do in terms of endorsements. Why not? Right? Oh, go to UConn. Psh, they don't even let you shoot the ball. All their other teammates have said that they want you just to do layups the entire time. Boring. Come to Iowa. We're like the Showtime Lakers, baby. Shooting it up, like hanging out, doing all kind of highlight vids. Like it's awesome. And so that's where the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to have that marketability. Like you see a team like Iowa can really take off. They have the Big Ten money behind them. The Big Ten marketing. They have all the big cities, New York, LA, Chicago, all in the Big Ten market now. Can't beat it. Can't beat it. I feel bad because like the ACC is fighting Florida State right now. Might as well give an update on that. From what I'm hearing, I read ESPN's Puff piece where they said, oh, the judge was going to throw out the case, but said, oh, they need to mediate it first before he can throw it out. That's bullshit. If he wanted to throw it out, he would have just threw it out. The key that came up is the ACC tried to say in the case that Florida State agreed to the increase in buyout. Florida State said, no, we didn't. The ACC had to reveal the papers in this court case. And guess what? Florida State voted no. That's it. End of the case right there. It's over. Because the judge said that going for a 300% increase in an exit fee is excessive, especially when the school didn't vote for it. There's no benefit for the school to have that. It's kind of like a last-ditch effort. And I think on the record, he said that there are precedent cases where the entire contract is void whenever people put in excessive damages. It's kind of like all those court cases. Remember whenever people were like illegally downloading music and you heard about like, oh my gosh, these people are being taken to court and being sued for millions of dollars. And guess what? They all kind of stopped, right? Because you can't prove the damages. Like, that's excessive. They can't come in and be like, you owe me $5 million. You downloaded our song, bro. We're U2. We're Metallica. Like, it doesn't happen like that. They'll be like, okay, well, how do you know that's what the damages are worth? That's what we said it's worth, and they're crying. That's what the ACC is doing right now. So, talk to some people that are connected. They said that their feeling is if the max right now, based on the way that first ruling went, was it Monday? Yesterday, maybe? Or was it late last week? That they think that the judge, they want them to mediate it out. They're thinking that it might not go to court anymore, and that Florida State's just going to pay the $40 million, which would be a gigantic win for Florida State.
Yeah.
That's less than what, wasn't Maryland's like $50 million?
Yep.
I'm thinking off the top of my head, so I could be wrong. But I want to say, like, they have precedent that Maryland paid 50. The contract said 40. They voted no. The ACC tried to say that they voted yes, which, how can your lawyer be so dumb to not know what the vote was? And well, they tried to play the game where they were trying to get it thrown out of the Florida court, and they wanted it in North Carolina. I think if they raise it to the Supreme Court, which ACC people seem to think that they're going to raise it to the Supreme Court, it's going to save the ACC, and once they're out of Florida, that Florida State's going to be screwed. The Supreme Court's going to look at it the same way and say, like, look, that's an excessive penalty that the school didn't even vote for. They're willing to pay to get out. Let them pay the original. That's what a guy I know that does cases like this said. They're probably going to end up just paying the original agreed upon, which would be $40 million, maybe a little bit more. Maybe the ACC can kind of, if they're mediating it out of court, they can kind of just, whatever they decide on. I don't know if it's going to open the floodgates though, because I've been saying this all along. You don't need another ACC school to come. I feel like the way ESPN's fighting it though, I have a hard time believing they're going to accept a lower penalty from Florida State and then give them SEC money, right? I've been saying that the entire time. What happened this week with the Florida State thing did not change my mind. I feel like Florida State's only move, well, I guess they have two. If the Big Ten offers them, they have to go. If the Big Ten says no, I feel like their only other move is to go to the Big 12. Now, is that going to be, they're going to make more money there, and they would have a new rivalry with UCF. I really don't think that's going to be the case. I think the Big Ten will gladly take them, and then we will see the shift. Because the SEC let it leak out that when they were doing the playoff negotiations, that the Big Ten and the SEC were ready to walk away and just have their own football tournament, right? And I'm kind of surprised by that. But like I said, I had some conversations. It seemed like that what was put on the table is that Fox and all the big networks would pay for a football, basketball type conference, but they wouldn't quite leave the NCAA. They would allow the other smaller conferences to come in for a playoff as affiliate members. Right? Kind of like I've been saying, they have to know that if they break away, they're screwing much of the country and it's done. But most people only care about the big state schools anyway. So if they all kind of join, like if Florida State comes into the Big Ten and then like a couple other ones join to kind of fill it out, North Carolina, NC State might go to the SEC or whatever. Then you have a actual conferences, but the other sports aren't going to really matter if it's only for football. And then they just kind of have these mega conferences that then do the NCAA for the other sports. Because I brought up money, that's where I was going with this. The other sports don't really make that much money anyway, like $1 million per school at most for like women's basketball or whatever. That's like the high level. Every other sport after that is like basically nothing or losing money. A lot of women's basketball programs lose money anyway. So they're not going to want to have a crappy small tournament for women's basketball between the SEC and the Big Ten. People wouldn't watch that, right? Let's lose it. Like, what are they going to do? Cut every sport and just only play football at these schools? I feel like they're going to stay in the NCAA in some capacity. And the affiliate member thing for the football tournament makes a lot of sense. I just don't know if they're going to end up merging. Like, I have a feeling that the Big Ten would win. All they need is like Texas to jump. Like if Florida State joins with Notre Dame, joins the Big Ten, and they're making $20 million more per year than the SEC, ESPN can't match the money, especially with the NBA contract being up and them trying to hold ransom for
I'm
like
wondering if
low ratings. Like
they end up saving money in that because the last time that they did that NBA contract, it was like they were trying to overinflate it. They were competing with themselves for a junk contract.
Well, now
maybe they saved money by pulling back on that.
Did you see what the NBA wants to do? They want a contract worth 3 times as much. And if ESPN pays that, they're dumb. Like they're talking about like trying to give up, and now they're saying that they might be able to get that money if they go to like a streaming partner like Apple TV, like MLS did. I feel like that would kind of like kill the league, right?
Good luck.
Yeah, that's what, if I'm ESPN, that's what I would say. And that's where I'm kind of surprised that if that happened, why wouldn't you come back to like the Big Ten and see if you could buy some basketball games? Right? There are some that are just thrown on Big Ten Plus or whatever still. If you're ESPN, I'm sure the Big Ten's not going to care, especially if they expand and grab some ACC schools like North Carolina. And it helped the Big Ten grab Duke and North Carolina. ESPN would 100% come back to the table and buy some of those basketball rights back. Like, it would be dumb for the Big Ten not to even try, right? Because if the ACC gets blown up, ESPN loses how much of their network or whatever. So even with Florida State leaving, like that's mainly football. I just don't know. Like I feel like it's going to happen soon. Everyone keeps saying July. I think we'll have a resolution before that. I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that Florida State was leaving in the middle of May.
Yeah.
Or early June. And they were just like, we're out. I feel like at this point, remember the USC timeline? The rumor broke that they were out in like April. Everyone laughed about it. And I think we talked about it on our show because I was like, I don't know if they would come to like the Big Ten, you know? And then it was quiet, and then official. And I feel like that's where we're at right now. We're in the quiet from Florida State. Today was pretty much, you're out. 40 million, that's it, you're out. The Big Ten has to be licking their chops, saying, that's it? We don't have to wait till 2036? Okay, perfect. ESPN, even in that, or the ACC, ESPN, one of them in that court case admitted that if Florida State lost, they couldn't hold their TV rights ransom. They have to let them go. Which is what the Big Ten was waiting to hear, right? Fox isn't going to give them an offer until they know that they can actually get the TV rights. They're not like, there's nothing else to really go to Discovery here other than just like slinging shit to the wall, right? Florida State won. Florida State won. I'll say it here. And I'll say that I think they're going to be out. Maybe they go independent. I'd be shocked. I think the Big Ten, their play right now has to be Florida State and Notre Dame. I don't care about the other ACC schools. Lloyd Carr and Jim Tressel were both at Notre Dame's spring football game. And one of the comments was like, they must be there trying to recruit him for the Big Ten. give him the come in with Florida State, and that's it. You win. You have the best conference. You can't beat it. Can't beat it no matter what. I saw the ESPN I brought up the S&P thing, and they were trying to redefine blue bloods, and they like lowered the number so that like they could include Georgia and LSU. And I was like, they must know. Because if you don't, and you're just counting pure blue bloods, if the Big Ten adds Notre Dame with Ohio State and Michigan, and they already have Nebraska, and they have USC, like you're pretty much done. Like that's pretty much it. The SEC would have Bama, Texas, Oklahoma, and by all like regular standards, that's it. Even if you go iffy, Penn State would definitely be ahead of a lot of SEC schools in terms of wins and everything like that. And if Florida State comes in, that's a lot of the new blood there. If they get Florida State and Miami, that swings the scales in terms of pure football power. And you have 3 networks, NBC, CBS, and Fox. They would have content every weekend, all hype. And I think at that point, SEC recruiting was a big thing for ESPN for a while there. Being stuck on ESPN isn't going to be big for recruiting pretty soon once the Big Ten's on all their networks. Hell, the Michigan spring game, they made the big announcement that Texas game is big noon. And I was like, I thought they had a good announcement coming. I knew it was big noon. You had to be an idiot not to know that they put every big time game at noon on Fox. It's their thing. They do it right after like their version of game day, right? So like Fox made ESPN keep that game in Ann Arbor as part of Texas joining the SEC. There's no other way they were going to put it anywhere else in the big noon game, right? They're not going to compete with like game days, whatever ABC broadcast at night. They bought it. It's a big noon. That's their game. They own the noon broadcast. Fox, like Ohio State, Michigan ratings have been so high that it's insane. In that same time window, they're like, that's pretty much the new prime time for the Big Ten. The noon game, and then they'll also have their night game, which gets good viewership. But some of those noon games have had great viewership alone. So they're not going to let Texas and Michigan play at night. There was no way that was going to happen. Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers versus Michigan defending national champs, like get out of here. That's going to be a hell of a game week 2. But that's kind of my long rant. What are your thoughts with Florida State? You think they're out, and where do you think they land? I know we usually talk about this every week anyway.
I mean, I think they've been playing their cards really well. That I think they're out. I think they need to announce it as soon as possible. Hopefully that they have that partner. There was already enough interest that they were able to get that process started, because I think they're ahead of the game. And I feel like, yes, Miami's in that AAU already, I believe, right?
Yeah, they are.
But unless you're planning on airing their games on Big Ten Classic, I'd pass on Miami, because I mean they're doing nothing to bring value in the ACC. So what value are they going to contribute to the Big Ten? Like, and I'm not at this point. I'm not being a dick, but what hurt Florida State's chances of getting into the playoffs? They won every game. The committee looked at it like there's no strength of schedule. There's nothing there. Clemson didn't help. North Carolina didn't help. Miami didn't help. Virginia didn't help. All these people that are trying to piggyback on Florida State's coattails as a justification for getting into the Big Ten, none of them did anything to help their case for being competitive, for holding their weight.
Well, that's where I think people are saying, oh, it's going to go to 24. Like, it's already locked in stone. That was one of the rumors that broke with the breakaway, where, we'll break away and we'll each add 24 teams. It's like, you think that they're going to stop there? Because, like, what if the Big Ten adds Florida State? They're already, what, at 18 or whatever? But they had Florida State, Notre Dame, North Carolina, and, like, I don't even know the other top schools. Like, if they grab Miami and say, like, whatever, they could even grab Stanford or something. Like, and you have all the top schools in one conference. The SEC, who are they going to add just to get to 24? You know, like, there's no hard number for them to be like, well, we're going to grab Duke and like these other schools that, like, to your point, added nothing to Florida State. Help them in nothing. Like, what's the point of the SEC even adding teams at that point? Just to keep them on ESPN?
I mean, one of the only, and this is just speculative, but maybe Florida State ends up not getting that Big Ten offer and backdooring their way into the SEC. And to me, I think the Big Ten would be is the better scenario of the two. But I almost wonder, will the Big Ten and Fox run into issues down the road if they gobble up all the higher tier, Power 5 conference people, and they absorb them all in, that outside of your Georgia, Alabama, and I put Alabama there just because of the recent bias with Saban. But I mean, you don't know what Bama's going to be like now that DeBoer's there. If those SEC schools aren't bringing as much weight, that's only going to drop the value of that media deal. That does it put Fox in a bad situation because of competitiveness within streaming and viewership.
Well, that's where I think that they're going to grab the Florida. They have to grab the Florida market. And honestly, if they let Alabama stay in the SEC forever, like, no big deal. I keep saying, like, they need to get into Texas, and I think that they realize that where the SEC is so regionalized, streaming, they're hoping that people stream it. But, like, to your point, they're not adding any fluff. They're not adding any national teams that's nationwide that don't care if they take a beating, like Rutgers, right? Like, we've talked about it before, and we've laid it out, like the scenarios with the Big Ten expanding, and even with all the powers, there's still going to be some teams like the Indianas of the world that teams are going to be able to beat up on and inflate their record. That the SEC right now, the way they're set up and expanding, like, oh, we're just going to add Texas and Oklahoma. It's like, all right, who's taking the losses here? Like, they're already starting the hype where they're saying, like, ESPN, they put a record out this year saying that, like, 3-loss teams could be in the playoff race because they're expecting the SEC teams to beat each other up because they don't have any fluff, Matt. That's why I'm wondering, do they just bite the bullet and they add a bunch of lesser teams from the ACC just to inflate records? Like, they might have to play like the devil's advocate, to your point, where the Big Ten, I keep saying they're set up more for success. They have all the media markets. They have teams that people are vested in, like diehard fans. Like, Nebraska's going 3-9. They're still selling out, Matt. They don't care. They are locked in, and they're happy to be there, right? They hate Ohio State. They hate Michigan now. They're going to be there. They're going to be locked in. They're hoping that this expansion gives them new life. I mean, it has to be brutal for them watching Iowa get all kind of national press for, like, their women's basketball team and, like, being in the Big Ten football championship. How? There was no reason that should have been Iowa whenever they split those divisions up. They're basically telling Nebraska, that's you. You guys are the power. And they're like, Scott Frost, baby. No, we don't need that. We don't need that. And that's where I think if they add, like, a Notre Dame and a Florida State and they're able to do, like, an Eastern ACC block down the coast, like, yeah, maybe it's not going to be as strong, like you said earlier. Who cares? Who cares? I think that they'd rather have a semifinal Big Ten championship game where it's like 10-win Florida State or whatever playing 10-win like Michigan or Ohio State or something, and then they play in the championship game, and so they're giving teams with better records, and then it's still going to be most likely their traditional powers. And the SEC, yeah, if Bama falls off, does Fox think that property moves the needle enough to give them an invite to the Big Ten if the Big Ten does start separating themselves with like a Notre Dame, like I've said? If Notre Dame joins, there's no way the SEC is going to keep up. And I wouldn't be surprised if like a Texas started looking, because the Big Ten could in theory bring in a Texas and an Oklahoma. Does it really upset the balance if the Midwest pod or whatever includes like Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, and then like Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, like Illinois? No. Northwestern? None of those other schools have really been pushing on the national level. Adding Oklahoma and Texas might make that better, because I think that's personally the weakest one of all our proposed regional divisions or whatever, you know? The East one would have Florida State, most likely Penn State at a top level, maybe Miami, like you're talking about the old days. Not even high def, Matt. Talking like 480p highlights, buddy, on the Big Ten Classic. But then you could also throw Notre Dame in there, because like you could say, well, we're just going to keep our Michigan and Ohio State in the Great Lakes pod or whatever. Throw Notre Dame in the East, where it's Florida State, Penn State, Notre Dame. Like that's going to be a good battle every year. And then of course out west, you already have Oregon, Washington, and USC now. And I think that's going to be a balanced conference, regionalized just by default. If they don't add Texas and Oklahoma or whatever, the Midwest one is kind of a disappointment, if we're being honest. But that's when you just say, like, Texas, look, buddy, we're making more money. Just come in. You guys you don't really compete. Who knows? Maybe Texas wins the national championship this year. And then the SEC is like hyping them up, and then they don't want to leave the SEC, right? That could be a case. We don't know. With post Nick Saban, like you said, Texas seems to be loaded. I don't know how a lot of people don't have them picked as like number one or whatever. I don't know what other teams you'd put up there. Georgia maybe? But like Texas has the quarterbacks. Like it's already locked in. I said the same thing last year with Michigan. I said, JJ's coming back. Michigan's returning everybody. Michigan should be the preseason number one. And a lot of people disagreed with me. And then Michigan won the national championship. This year, that team is Texas. That team is Texas. So if I'm keeping my logic from last year, a team that was close, lost in the playoffs, has their quarterback and key people coming back, ready to make that next step, is Quinn Ewers going to take them to the national championship level. This is their year. I don't know what team you put ahead of them. I honestly don't. Ohio State, they have quarterback guys that are throwing 4 interceptions at their spring game, Matt. It's two-hand touch, their game. I have spring games on here. This will be my last topic. I was kind of disappointed watching pieces of the Ohio State spring game. And then the Michigan one rolled around, dude, and I loved it. I don't know if you caught any of it. It was full tackle, other than the quarterbacks. They let the quarterbacks run. I think they did call one touchdown back because the quarterback, he got like touched or whatever. But they let him play. Like they actually let him run, and he would have scored if he was able to break that tackle. And it was full contact. People, oh my gosh, the Ohio State and Michigan State guys were out. They must have saw how good it looked, because the complaints were through the roof. Oh, I'm so happy they're playing tackle. Maybe someone will get hurt out there. It's like, you do know that they tackle, like they have to practice tackling at some point, guys. It's a spring game. Like I'd rather have them tackle now and have time to like, recover than like do full contact, non like stuff. Cause you always hear about people getting injured in like training camp or whatever. But if you're going to do a spring game, that's how you do it. It was great TV. They had the celebration with the national championship. Fox, I thought, did a great job talking through the players. And of course, they were the national champs. Joel and Gus, I think, were the guys doing the call. They were at every game last year, basically. Michigan was in the Big Noon, like a bunch of games. So they already knew most of the players coming back. So it wasn't like a big lift for them, where like if it was just a random team that they didn't call, I feel like they wouldn't have known a lot of the key guys, and it might have been kind of weird. Because for comparison, I watched A&M spring game. It was night and day. What Fox put on was an actual professional hype video for the University of Michigan. Texas A&M's cameraman was zoomed in so close, I didn't know what the hell was happening half the time. He's like zoomed in. I was like, did the guy never watch football on TV to zoom out? He was keyed in on a couple receivers for a couple plays that I'm like, buddy, what am I watching here? I think they were playing tackle too. I kind of zoned out. I was kind of pumped about the Michigan one. Quarterbacks throwing. Yeah, there were some mistakes in the spring game. I really liked how Michigan's offensive line looked. I know Sharon Moore's a running offensive line type guy. An offensive line does not usually look that good in the spring game. I mean, Michigan has one of the top 3 defensive lines coming back, and they were able to get pushed. I know they didn't play much, but that opening drive with Donovan Edwards, who looked like he just added muscle and looks like he's going to be a beast, it had me pumped up. I will say that. If Milroe was out there watching Orji run around, and he decided to transfer, if you added him and Michigan could kind of lean into that offense, where you have Milroe and Orji kind of as the same style of quarterback, I would feel a lot more confident with Michigan kind of going into next year. Because if Orji were to get hurt, they're not going to have another quarterback on the roster right now that can do the power run offense that looked really good with Donovan Edwards and Alex Orji, if I'm being honest. But if they were doing two-hand touch, I probably would have been like, this is kind of a crap team, you know? It's like seeing guys make cuts and like not have. I watched the Ohio State guy make a cut, and I was like, hey, I wonder if he'll score a touchdown. And they blew it dead. And I was like, how do I know if he was going to score a touchdown, though? That's my key takeaway from the Ohio State game. Donovan Edwards got there getting tackled. And I was like, good. Let's see if he can run through some of these tackles, man. That's what I like to see from a spring game. I actually didn't catch any of the Florida State one, though, because I had some family stuff come up. So did you watch theirs?
What's that?
Did you watch the Florida State spring game?
I did. I caught most of it. I had some house projects I was working on at the same time, but I liked the fact that they rolled out the new turquoise uniforms for the quarterbacks. Thought that was a different touch. I mean, the attendance wasn't as high, but considering that half the stadium's demolished right now for construction, major renovations with that Big Ten money we're going to be getting soon, got to expand.
Did they have tackle or did they do touch?
They did tackle. I mean, it wasn't live on the quarterbacks, but
yeah, but that's more like an actual game.
Yeah,
it's almost like if they can do that and pull it off and get it on like big time TV, it has to be a recruiting event. Because like some of the recruiting stuff that shifted heavily towards Michigan after that game, especially basketball. Like I talked about Dusty May getting hired from FAU. Michigan, he went to the spring game, dude. Michigan had 7 basketball commits over the last 2 days. He basically rebuilt the entire program using the spring game as like a springboard. And it's insane. I had no hype. Now looking at the roster with the guys Michigan brought in, it's like one of the top transfer classes, and he's getting back on the map with freshmen coming in too. I think he was able to shift Michigan's basketball future using the hyped up football team, which I didn't believe was possible. People tell me the NIL can only go for one sport. But if you have teams going together like that and everyone's committing after watching the spring football game and seeing how hype it was, the attendance, like you said, I saw people making fun of Michigan's attendance. And then they were talking about how high Ohio State's was, but I saw a picture. There's no way Ohio State's spring game was at 80,000 or whatever they said. The entire upper deck was empty. Unless it filled up after. And a lot of the lower deck was empty. I'm like, their stadium only holds 100,000. Like, they downsized. I don't even know if it holds 100,000 anymore. They didn't have a full stadium. What the hell are they talking about? Why are they faking numbers for the spring game? It makes no sense. Like,
you could be like Miami and have 1,000.
Well, I thought it was kind of like a UNC thing where it's like, and we're sold out, and it's like you can just see the silver bleachers blinding you when the camera zooms out. That's like the Ohio State. I mean, it's like we won. I'm like, my God, them and Miami are going for the preseason championships every year now. Ohio State, and Miami. They should just have a preseason. They should just do the spring game together and see who wins the spring title. Recruits, transfers. Right? Every time I see it's like Miami's king of the transfers, baby. I'm like, I don't care. Win. I don't care who's at your spring game. Awesome. They could have watched the national champs out there. Blake Corum was on the field. He came out. JJ was there. Like, you could have saw them national champs if you wanted to for free. It's a spring game. No one cares. But I did like the TV product. And that's my last thing. You have anything else you want to talk about?
No.
And I went kind of longer because we're getting back on football. We have the NFL draft, and then next week I'll try to talk more about the UFL. I watched a little bit of it, and some of it still just irks me, and I don't know why. But maybe after the draft we'll see. Hopefully, Michigan can break the record most guys drafted. I would like to see that. That would really put a stop to some of the narrative about that they're only able to win because of the Connor Steins thing. And it's like, no. If they have the most guys drafted, maybe they were just the most talented team. And if you can do that, people keep saying too, like, oh, there's no way they could win because they didn't recruit that well. They still recruited on like a top 10 level. So it's like... Top 10 can win you the title. What are you guys talking about? I don't get it, but we'll find out soon. See what the NFL draft is going to hold. I don't think the Bears will do anything crazy. I think they'll get Caleb Williams, but we will see. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.